They've put out a proposal to screen babies and toddlers for what's called emerging mental illness. Now, what that means is that you can get a mental illness, or you might get a mental illness if you've got these particular symptoms of these things. And some of the symptoms are things like irregular feeding, difficulty sleeping, crying, temper tantrums, losing track of a favourite stuffed animal, and hyperactivity. Now, I don't know about you, Monica, but I'm a grandmother. I've got 5 grandkids, and I'm also a teacher by trade. I'm not teaching at the moment, but every single one of those symptoms of what can be considered to be emerging mental illness is just normal childhood behaviour.
Hello, this is Monica from RDA Media. Recently, I was contacted by the Citizens Commission on Human Rights Victoria, and they told me something absolutely alarming. For example, 1,459 children aged 2 to 6 years old are on antidepressants right now in Australia. 1,384 aged 2 to 6 years old are on antipsychotic drugs. This was very shocking to me. I was also informed that there is a process being implemented as we speak to screen children from the age of 0 to 3 years old to see if they preemptively might have a mental illness, and if so, they could be prescribed with psychotic drugs for this preemptive illness. Kim Cullen from the Citizens Commission on Human Rights in Victoria is going to explain to us a little bit more about what's going on.
Well, firstly, thanks for having us, because this is definitely a topic that needs to be spread far and wide as far as we're concerned, because what's happened is that, well, let's just track back a little bit. First, we had a Victorian Royal Commission into Mental Health in Victoria and the findings for that, and then there's the Productivity Commission, which is a federal inquiry, and that was to check the finances of country and where all the money for the mental health was going. And basically from the Productivity Commission, what they've done is they've put out a proposal to screen babies and toddlers for what's called emerging mental illness. Now, what that means is that you can get a mental illness, or you might get a mental illness if you've got these particular symptoms of these things. And some of the symptoms are things like irregular feeding, difficulty sleeping, crying, temper tantrums, losing track of a favourite stuffed animal, and hyperactivity. Now, I don't know about you, Monica, but I'm a grandmother. I've got 5 grandkids, and I'm also a teacher by trade. I'm not teaching at the moment, but every single one of those symptoms of what can be considered to be emerging mental illness is just normal childhood behaviour.
This is very concerning. How could they possibly know that a baby is going to have a mental illness?
Well, they can't actually predict that anyone can have a mental illness. It's not medical science. You're not looking at, blood tests. You're not looking at hair analysis samples. You're not looking at the physical condition of the body. You're just looking at particular symptoms. And with babies, it's like you can't do that, right? And the scary thing is that already we've got over 2,300 little kids, under 5 in Australia on psychiatric drugs, right? And it's like, who would put, your parents must be pretty desperate to consider that they'd put their kids on a psychiatric drug, or very uneducated or something. And for the GP or psychiatrist to recommend that, it's really criminal.
I think some parents, they're still under the illusion that doctors know best. So if a doctor was to say the 4-year-old child needs psychiatric drugs, they just put them on it. Do you think that's what happens?
I think that's what happened, because people don't question authority. There's still a lot of people who don't question authority, and I know you obviously do, and what you guys stand for, and I look away, and I always have as well. It's sort of like you have to be able to think for yourself and make your own decisions, and you have to do your own due diligence as well.
They're trying to put in a process where nurses and doctors will assess children from the age of 0 to 3 to see if they might have a mental illness, and they could be put on psychiatric medication under the age of 3. Is that true?
Absolutely. There's already kids that are under 3 who are on psychiatric medication. We've got the statistics on that. It's on our fact sheet. You can have a read of that. But the way it's going to work is like this. At the moment, we have these, and they're going up all through, you have the maternal health centres, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a baby, you take your baby there and they get checked out. Their hearing gets checked out. The nurse checks out, makes sure that they're feeding properly, they're sleeping properly. Does the mother need any help, right? And traditionally, it's been a place for mothers to go to get the help that they need and the support that they need, which is a good thing because as a new mother, you need that, right? However, what they're looking at doing it is putting in these screening checks as well as the medical checks. So along with the medical checks that the little kids will get, they'll also be screened for emotional mental health with those things that I gave you. You know, is your child sleeping? Is your child sleeping well? Oh no, my child's not sleeping well. So, you know, like with every 3 months or so, you take your child, especially in the first 12 months, to these places to get the checks done. So a track will be kept on that, an ongoing track.
Right. Okay. So what can we now? It's not in motion yet. It's not happening yet, but it's being discussed. So where is it being discussed, and at what point can we intercede and create a lot of pressure to our parliament to make sure this doesn't go ahead?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It's a really good question. So what we can do is at the moment, the results from the Productivity Commission, from the Victorian Royal Commission into Mental Health and other inquiries and stuff that have been going on around the country, they're at a point of, there's a select committee for mental health and suicide that's happening nationally at the moment. And I'm not 100% sure of the procedure that select committee goes through to make a decision, but the Productivity Commission has already recommended that these recommendations go through. So what they're saying is that the states will have to pay, as well as nationally, but the states will actually have to put money into their budget for these programs to be implemented into our, our maternal health centres. And also what we've got in Victoria coming up, remember, is the new wellness hub. So I've got one down the road from me in Brimbank, right? So it's going to be a well-being hub. And now they're calling, instead of calling just mental illness, it's now your well-being. So it's overall your medical and your mental. So to the second part of the answer to that, I guess, is like on the back of our fact sheet, if you have a look at that, what we want people to do is to actually contact specific MPs, because they're the ones that are going to be, in effect, making decisions on whether these go through or not. And we've got a list of those, but we've also want you to talk to your local MP, because what our experience is in talking to our local member of parliament, they've got no idea of this.
Every politician, left, right, independent, doesn't matter. I mean, pretty much everyone would think that this is ridiculous. So even if they aren't the ones making the decision, I think it's important that we email as many as we can, because when the time comes, they'll be like, oh yeah, I know about this and I'm against that. And maybe one member of parliament will be the hero of it and really like take it on board and find out what the heck's going on. But Can I just ask him, is there going to be a warning before this goes ahead? Is there something that we can watch out for?
I think we're going to have to keep an eye on our budget, because the budget comes out in May. So we'll know in the budget how much they're putting towards these programs. And I'd say it's going to be very, lots of millions of dollars. Personally, I think they're going to just push it through.
So what if they're going to, okay, so you think they're going to push it through anyway, but we can still try. And even after the fact, like as a mother, we could ask.
Exactly.
We could ask them, are you screening for mental illness in my child?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's informed medical consent, isn't it? It's like you being able to say, no, I don't want my child to be screened. I'm not going to answer those questions.
So now they won't be able to go to the midwife nurse and feel comfortable because, everything is in question these days,
I think everyone can be made aware of what's happening and do something about this. And I think everyone needs to know about it because, our children are our future. And if we don't protect our children, we don't have a future. So we need to make sure that our kids aren't being put on psych drugs, that we actually have a choice of what we as parents and grandparents and educators want to ensure the best for our kids. And screening children from 0 to 3-year-old for emerging mental illness, it's like, how unscientific is that?
Even though this may already be being implemented as we speak, there is something that we can do about it. If we make enough noise, things can be backtracked. This particular situation is so shocking that it doesn't matter what side of politics a member of parliament is on or you are on. I think we can all agree that children do not need psychiatric medicine and that you cannot predetermine if they're going to have a mental illness at the age of 0. So I suggest you email your local members of parliament. On the Reignite Democracy website, we have made this really easy for you. Follow the link below on the screen here, and you can find the 6 members of parliament that represent your area. And you can email as many as you like. But we need to get the message out there that this is not okay, and we do not want our children being drugged. Remember, big pharmaceutical companies are in the business of keeping us sick and dependent on them.